Yo, what's popping? It is the final Power Rankings Monday before the Summer Showdown tournament, which I will be attending in Toronto. So hit me up if you see me, I guess. Um, I'll try and get some. I'll get the Hisu fan cam going, things like that. Um, but yeah. So number 13 in NA, starting right into this, the Paris Eternal. To nobody's surprise, that the talent's not there with this team. I think it's safe to say that. Maybe you can argue the back line is average, maybe. But it just doesn't. It's just not looking good. They barely manage a win against the team directly above the New York Excelsior, or not a win, a map win in total. It's just not. It's just not there. And I understand. Oh, it's hard. You come in halfway through the season. Nobody really expected you to do anything. You're just NA contenders players that weren't even signed to a team beforehand. So like the NA contenders pool is getting quite thinned out, I would say, especially after this Paris roster revamp, which I don't even know if it's better than the last one. Um, it's just not there. And for New York, who is directly above them, it also the talent is there. You know that's the whole joke, but the strats aren't there. I think because the whole time New York has been relying on Yaki and Flora to just diff the entire enemy team. It feels like, and it hasn't really worked, especially after the first week. They came out the first week, they looked strong, but they never really got any better past that. They just remained stagnant, and they just kept dropping and dropping down the standings. Uh, I don't know. It's rough. This team just doesn't want to move forward, and it looks like they want to rely on Yaki Flora so much, but they're simply not good enough to carry the whole team like that. I don't know. Ansu J made them improve quite a bit, but still not enough to actually get them out of the bottom of the barrel um, at all. So coming in at number 11 is going to be the Florida Mayhem, who, despite beating the two teams below them, actually went down one. And it's like, well, if beating New York and Paris doesn't really mean a lot because they're New York and Paris, the two worst teams in your region, probably in the league. I would probably rate Valiant higher than them. I would hope. But I don't know. Florida, I like the double flex support for them because you're not going to win the mirror against anyone above you realistically for a whole three maps. Maybe you'll take a map, but you're not going to take three on the mirror. So if you want to cheese out some double flex support wins, I kind of understand. And I almost encourage it for Florida, but I don't know if it'll actually be able to, how much damage it'll really do in the tournament, because even a team like New York was able to figure it out whenever they were playing against them on the defense on Junkertown. So it's like, if New York is able to exploit it and roll you basically while you're on it for one of the points, um, what happens whenever you go against a team like the San Francisco Shock? They probably just get rolled. I mean, they did take a map off Dallas with it, so some merit there, I suppose. But another problem with Florida is I don't understand why you're playing Sermajed Rupel even for the Brigalucio. Are you like thinking that you're going to bring out the pocket double flex support or something? Sermajed has just been kind of inting a lot of the time for not a lot of value. There'd be times where he's booping Flora off the high ground. But that doesn't actually do anything because he just coach Jones back up and Sermajed dies, and now you're in Lucio. So Florida's a little bit weird. It does make sense they were able to beat the two teams below them though. And you know what? Maybe they'll take a few maps on the double flex support just because it's different. And they were the third team picked. I guess, Shock and Dallas both rate them higher than Vancouver and Washington, I guess. Now, I don't know if they rate them higher, but I think they just don't want to be bothered dealing with the double flex support, and they can just let someone else deal with them, which I guess was the plan. And it worked out. So coming in at number, what is that, 13, 12, 10. Number 10 right now is the Washington Justice. Washington falling two spots, actually, right? That's two spots? Yeah. So the thing about Washington is they lose to, it was Vancouver, right? No, it was Houston. They did lose to Vancouver, though, also. But this week they lost to Houston, and it was very bad. Houston exploited Kalios being super aggressive on the Junker Queen, and Decay and Assassin just never picked up the slack. I don't know if you want to which of the parties you want to blame. I'm choosing to blame both of them because Kalios, the over aggression, it doesn't feel like it's placed well. It's just like he just goes right, and you hope that you're doing enough aggro to let Decay and Assassin actually pick up some slack and get the damage out. But Houston just kind of rolled him. Kalios couldn't do anything, and then their DPS had no space, and Decay wasn't getting any picks. Assassin had like a final blow after two maps. It was a really bad showing. And I think that a lot of teams above them are going to be able to, uh, deal with this aggression that Callius is putting out and just make the whole of Washington crumble. So, yeah, Washington, I'm not too high on them right now. So, I don't know. I just think they don't have too much strategy going on. They're just going and hoping to can assassin kills. And it might work against some teams, but it's a pretty easy strat to understand. And if Washington don't have any other tricks up their sleeve, they'll just lose. But coming up at number 9, I remember the number, is the Vancouver Titans. So Vancouver has fallen from grace for me a little bit. Um, I don't know. They lose to Boston in a reverse sweep, right? So, like, what can you say? And the thing about that is, I don't know if they had the rematch. I'm not too confident that Vancouver actually wins that. Like, Boston looked very solid, and the biggest problem with Vancouver for me, I think, was King wasn't performing at all, really. Even when they were rolling, King was still had some questionable moments, and I think they kind of need King to actually make a difference, because while Aspire is one of the best Sojourns in the league, I think we can pretty confidently say that. Um, Mirror's been probably a bit better than average, but King has been well below average. I think we need to sober up here and see that King is not putting in the work. He just isn't. Um, he's good enough to beat some teams like Washington was below them. Who else did they beat the prior week? Oh no, they got 3-0'd by Houston even. Like, their wins haven't been that impressive. Realistically, it's Paris, New York, and Washington, who I all have rated in the bottom 3. Like, it's time to wake up with Vancouver, I think. And I've woken up. I'm sorry. So Aspire can only blind me for so long before you look at the weaknesses in this roster. Yes, Moss has been doing decent. Um, the backline's been solid, I guess, but like, there needs to be more. There needs to be more from Vancouver other than just Aspire being their main wing position. And yes, the disengages are very good, and I do recognize that, but I just wish I just think they need a little bit more. Now coming in at number 8 is going to be the team that reverse swept in the Boston Uprising. Now, Laurie gone. Who's in? The NA boy. Seeker decimates Aspire. Not decimates, that's a little too much. But he does outperform him. And Crimzo looked all right on the break. I'm not going to say he looked fantastic, but he did look solid. Not worse than fucking his name. Oh, come on. No way I'm forgetting his name right now. Oh, come on, man. MCD. How could I forget that guy? But yeah. And the thing is, Punk looked much better than Mag in the synergy and everything. And they look solid. They only had 4 days of scrim time with that roster, and they beat Vancouver. If this team was performing the whole way through the stage, I would have been very interested. I think they probably could have made some. No, they had too hard of a schedule to make this. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, and I can't say for certain that the Korean lineup wouldn't have been able to beat Vancouver just because the schedule has been brutal for them. Uh, but the NA's team, the mixed roster, does look better. Seeker had a fantastic breakout game, first game, off the rip. Great job. And I think Boston, I've said they've been on the up and up basically this entire season. But now, maybe now, actually on the up and up. I forget the number again. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7 is the London Spitfire, who actually are going up a few spots with a 3-1 win against Toronto Defiant. So London, they were kind of trending downward. I think they were maybe underestimating themselves a bit because, yes, I like them playing the May to try and get an advantage on the upper teams. I do think that they're good enough in the mirror to contend with some of the higher level teams and just bring in the May when it's very much beneficial. There are some maps when they brought it out where I'm like, I don't know if this is optimal to play right here, even for Backbone, which, yes, is made better than this Genji, but this Genji's probably average or maybe a little above. I'm not sold on that. I think average is better, but he did better than all low for sure. So there's that. But London, I like what they're doing. I think they finally have a bit more confidence in themselves. They look like they're having a lot of fun, and that's very important for this team. Whenever they get any momentum building, we saw it against the Defiant. They can just go. If you let them, give them an inch, they will take a mile, as they say. I like what London's doing. Sparker's been great. Howdy's been great. The backline's great. Backbone is good enough. They're looking pretty good for 7. But coming in at number 6 is going to be the Atlanta Reign. Yes, they get blown out by the Gladiators, but let's not forget. Let us not forget that this team still looks good. They are able to beat London. They go the distance against Houston. I think Gladiators just super leveled up, and they had a lot of things go right, and they end up winning. I think Atlanta looked much better with Speedily, and I am confident they could beat the teams below them pretty soundly. Uh, it just didn't work out for them this stage because they took too long to actually figure out what was going on, and Atlanta in the regular season just wasn't as good. So no? That's the second team that's up there that doesn't make the tournament. But yeah, there's no Atlanta Reign in the tournament. It's a shame because I think they could have done something. I don't think they were going to go as deep as they did in the previous tournaments, but Atlanta in a tournament's always scary, and it's just too bad we didn't get to see them. And it's their fault, really, because they weren't able to beat Gladiators, who is going to be directly above them. Yes, the 2 and 4 LA Gladiators are coming in at number 5. That's real. They look much better with the space lineup. They finally look like they knew what they were doing. They weren't making the stupid macro mistakes. They weren't trying to get too much value of their ultimates and save them when they should have used them. Specifically, Kevster most of the time. That's not entirely true, but he was a prime example of it. And they finally had it all together. And just too little, too late. London was able to get the win, and we do not see the Gladiators in the tournament. I think they could have made a run still. They're the Gladiators. It looks like the pieces were finally falling together perfectly. And I can't say for certain that they wouldn't have been able to punch up into the top 4 at this point. But it's not happening. Coming in at number 4 is the Houston Outlaws. So I'm going to talk about Houston and Defiant at the same time, because obviously they're going to be the next two. I'm very torn on these teams, because on one hand, Pelican Merit is a much better DPS duo than Hisu and Aldo. Specifically, like the biggest gap is between Pelican and Aldo. Aldo really is not a strong spot for the Toronto lineup. But I think Toronto has a better macro understanding of this meta still. And if they can get Hisu, on the Ashe as much as possible, because the team does perform better with Hisu on the Ashe, they're able to slow down the game and use that macro advantage that they have over so many teams to their full effect. Whereas if it's on the Sojourn, just a pick from Hisu isn't good enough. And Hisu's not like a phenomenal Sojourn. He did get diffed by Sparker. Like, he is very good, but he's not super elite, like he is on the Ashe, or like Toronto is on the Ashe. So I think the matchups, or the map types, the map picks will be quite important for Toronto Defiant, more so than any other team in the league. So I'm going to say, you know what, they shit the bed against London. They dropped the spaghetti, but I'm still willing to place my faith in them just because of their macro understanding of the game. Whereas Houston, I'm very close to putting them ahead of them because Pelican and Merit are so damn good. And that's the biggest reason, is basically Pelican and Merit. Yes, they're still good in their disengages, and their ult usage in the backline's been solid at least. And Dante's been pretty good on the Junker Queen. He's getting a lot of damage out. But the macro understanding is better for Toronto, and that's why I'm going to remain with them in third place, although that is highly contested for me. And then the final two spots, no surprises here. The Dallas Fuel is ahead of the San Francisco Shock after beating them. Dallas proved that, they had a better understanding. Like together as their hive mind was better than Proper could do. And I would say in basically every position except for I still think. Now, here's the thing about Sparkle versus Proper, is Sparkle definitely had more resources and a better team around him to make him look better than Proper. If you put Proper in where Sparkle was, does Dallas do better? I'm not going to say for sure, but I don't think it was a diff. It's not like Sparkle diffed him. I'd say they weren't even, probably. It's just that Sparkle had more behind him, so he was able to step up and do more. But yeah, Shock looked very good, but still, Dallas as a team were better. No matter how good Proper is, he's just one guy. And especially in this meta, one guy is not enough to get the job done. Now, in the tournament, maybe they step up, because Kilo was outperformed by Edison. That was another key component that was crazy. But other than that, That was the biggest individual diff. It's just Dallas had better team play as a whole. And that's why they're going to be first in NA for me. Going on to the East region, coming in at number 7 is the LA Valiant. No one, well, I guess there is some surprise because you could argue that should be the Spark. But I think that it's hard. So should that be the Spark because the Valiant were able to beat Chengdu in 5? I don't know. That Chengdu team that played the Valiant, they didn't feel right. The Valiant did play a very good game. Isihan did diff leave, and Becky and Jinmu, I don't know, they both didn't do that great. I'm still gonna be a Becky hater. Um, I don't know. I cannot bring it within me to put Valiant ahead of Spark because Spark they showed even the next game up whenever they played Philly that once Shy and Alpha E came a little bit better because before Answer Charge Shy was not performing as well. But I don't know. I think if you catch Spark whenever they're able to bring their A game, whenever Shy's on his A game, I think Shy still solos the Valiant. Now, can he do that game in, game out? He has. He just wasn't able to that one specific game against the Charge. And I'm gonna put them ahead still. You know what? It's just the Spark should be a much better team, and I think they are still. If they go head to head, I'm picking Spark every time. That's the biggest thing for me. I don't know. They are undoubtedly below all the other teams, and maybe below Valiant, but I think Shy and Alpha Yi and even Bernard are too good. And I don't know. Spark should not be this bad. It's quite sad to see. But coming in at number 5 is going to be the Chengdu Hunters. Chengdu, they did not bring. They just didn't perform. They just didn't. Right. You lose to Valiant. You lose to Charge. And like you just couldn't do that. You literally couldn't do that. You have to clutch up against those teams, and you have the capabilities to beat these teams. Leave was not there when he needed to be. Jinmu was not there when he needed to be, which I think because Leave wasn't there. And then when there's no Leave on Chengdu, suddenly that roster is not nearly as good as we were touting them to be. They just weren't because Leave does so much for this team, and it needs to be understood. It's not the backline carrying. It's not Gaga carrying. It is Leave and Jinmu being set up for success, and even then, they're setting a lot up themselves, I feel like. So Chengdu is sneakily like another team carried by their DPS in the East. And if Leave doesn't show up, as we saw, it is not going to end well. And that's it. Coming in at number 4 is going to be the Fusion. So I did put the Fusion below the Charge. And I was considering it both ways. Because the thing about both of these teams is Charge are a bit better, well-rounded, whereas Philadelphia is more, MN3, who is back in the lineup, God bless, and Zest. Choi Se-won can go toe-to-toe with Zest, because Choi Se-won has been unlocked this week. He actually stepped up. He is performing how I expected him to perform. I still think he can give more, but he's played how I've expected him to perform with this retooled roster. And now that he's unlocked and he is solidly the best player on his team still, lights out. Like, he was doing so much work. Him against Zest will be interesting to watch, I think, for sure. But MN3 does win against Jimmy, right? I think it's safe to say. I personally am going to put MN3 higher than Jimmy still, but Charge do have a better backline. I much greaterly. Holy shit! What am I saying? I rate Eveltal or Xerneas, my apologies, and Faraway higher than Fixa and God for sure. And Krong has actually gotten better at Junker Queen. I didn't expect it, but he has gotten better. So is Fury, but they're both getting better, and they're both not top tier still, but they're both solid, I think, or at least good enough. So it just depends. Do you rate the Charge's backline better than the Fusion's backline, that diff being greater than MN3 and Jimmy, or not, is what it comes down for me. And I think the backline diff is great enough that I firmly put Charge above the Fusion. Hold on, something's... Oh, never mind. So, the final 2 spots. No surprise, it's Shanghai and Seoul. So, the biggest thing for me is going into that match. I was like, well, Shanghai is more whoever was just going in and he's doing his thing. And then Lip is there. But I think the synergy is there. Because, for me, Seoul is Fitz get some damage off, Stalker go follow up. Prophet also is getting great damage off and able to finish kills when the Brig is a bit more aggressive. And those are the key differences between Seoul and Shanghai. Shanghai is who are you goes in, Lip is also there, and they're set up, and they're both doing damage at the same time. Who are you is able to kill people, Lip is able to kill people, and they're each able to finish off targets that they weren't going to before. It's a bit more seamless, it's a bit more aggressive, it's a bit more risky because if you aren't able to get that target focus on right, if you aren't able to actually secure those kills that you need to, you lose. Whereas Soul, it takes more time to set that up, but it should be a more sure kill, which should open up the fight better. But Shanghai was able to move faster, do it all faster, and do it all quicker and more efficient than Soul, and they just won. It also helps that I think Lip kind of diffed Fitz overall. So that also helps greatly. Yeah, that's the biggest difference maker for me. And then also another subtle difference maker is Izayaki lived far better than Prophet. He still had his moments where he would die first because of course he is. He's Brig. He's getting focused down. But because Prophet plays that a bit more aggressive style, almost DPS, not like a DPS Brig, but he is trying to optimize his damage and get good whip shots off to finish off targets. Izayaki is more focused on living and outputting throughout a whole fight. Prophet was an easier target to kill, I think. So Izayaki also had the edge there. But that's the biggest difference for me, and that Shanghai is placed firmly on top of the East region after that pretty dominating win against Seoul. So anyway, let me know your power rankings down below. Who did I rate too high? Who did I rate too low? Like this video if you like it. Subscribe for more daily Overwatch League content. Thank you so much for watching and have yourself a good one. Deuces.